Hello, folks. Today we're talking about chapter 3. And in a prior edition of the book that we used to use for the class, it was chapter 6. But regardless, we're talking about communication. So, for all intents and purposes, communication is one of the biggest challenges and stumbling blocks in romantic relationships and sexual relationships. And there are myriad reasons for the challenges to communication. So, in a way, we're sort of asking or beginning with the question of why is it so difficult? Why is it so hard to communicate? Number one, people have to find a way to get their point across, and that can become a challenge in and of itself. It also is very difficult to listen. Research shows linguistically that often when people are in conversation, they're not fully paying attention. They're often thinking about what they're going to say as opposed to thinking about truly the context or the tenor of what the person they're communicating with is actually saying. So those two things right there make it difficult. It's also hard to share. It can be very difficult to self-disclose. It can be difficult to find ways to talk about what's happening emotionally, internally, and externally as well. And so being able to share and being able to be validated in that sharing, that is one of the challenges. Also, communication is different with respect to gender. So the sex and gender differences within our society and across societies within and across societies are also very, very key and very, very important to trying to establish and create good communication, particularly in heterosexual straight relationships. Women tend to see relationships as a series of networks, a series of interactions, as a way to create and build community and to avoid isolation. For men, relationships are a way to establish power, status, and often a way to exchange information. And so, clearly, with respect to gender, the emotive styles for men and for women tend to be different, and they tend to differ. Men tend to want to strip away the emotional content of a lot of what is shared informationally. Women tend to want to bring back in and have that rich emotional detail and content to actually be present. Research shows also that in terms of how men communicate, men are more likely to use slang. They're much more likely to talk about money matters, and they're also much more likely to talk about quantity. So, amounts, those kinds of things matter a lot more to men. For women, detail matters much, much more. Emotional detail, significant detail of what happened and how it happened, that matters much more. So, in terms of things that can be done to kind of bridge the gap, number one, in terms of men and women communicating and those differences therein, both sexes can be free to adopt the style of the opposite sex. And so men can learn to emote more and be more willing to share emotional content. Women can strip more of that away and be much more bottom line focused, focusing much more on what happened and much more on the information and the significance of that information. Both sides, regardless of what kind of pairing or what kind of relationship we're talking about, can engage in what we call empathic listening, where we are listening to understand, we are listening for emotional depth, and we're responding in kind with a sort of like minded emotional depth and emotional quality. And so, in a sense, sometimes it's referred to as feeling someone on the inside, being able to feel the emotional significance of what they're sharing and also being able to relate that back to them. It can also be a matter of, well, what I'm hearing is, or it sounds like, or the always popular, hey, that sounds messed up, or something like that. That's a way to establish a link, a vital link in terms of communication that allows people and permits people to feel like they've been heard. We can also allow for silence. We can also allow for there to be little lulls in the conversation, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that, oh my God, what happened? No one is listening. No one is listening to me, or did I say too much? Lulls do need to be present for both sides to kind of register and digest ultimately what has been shared and what's been heard, and then to think about the best ways to move forward. So those are just a few examples of better ways to communicate, better ways to establish firmer stronger, more healthy patterns of communication. We also get into some of the not so good things to avoid. Bad communication patterns often include name calling, as you might imagine. That's fairly obvious. The research shows that that's not a good idea. But also when people use overkill or they overgeneralize, overreact, when they say things like, well, you always or you never, overwhelmingly that's those, regardless of whether they're true or not, overwhelmingly those tend to be non-starters. And what we mean by that is that when those you always, you never, or if you're not here by 6 o'clock, this relationship is over. When you're doing those kinds of things, those overreactions, they tend to, again, clam things up. They tend to make the communication much more difficult to reestablish, makes trust much more difficult to establish and to rebuild. So those are the kinds of things that we also want to avoid. Sabotage is another example of this too, something that would be bad and negative for communication, where within a relationship, someone does something deliberately to hurt the current experience or perhaps something that will happen in the future. So at times people think, well, if I do this, maybe it's just an experiment and it'll work out. And those kinds of things tend to, again, backfire. And so paying attention to and prioritizing the effective communication strategies and the effective ways to communicate matter. Linguistic researchers have shown, for instance, that the differences between men and women in terms of how they communicate are indeed embedded in culture, that these are cross-cultural differences, that linguistically men and women develop and grow in different linguistic and different language subcultures. So men learn to communicate and establish communication patterns differently. Women learn differently as well, from the time of childhood all the way through adolescence and throughout the socialization process that we've talked about, particularly with respect to gender socialization. So these differences are embedded in culture. This doesn't mean that everyone is going to absolutely conform to this pattern based upon their gender or their gender identity, but those are the ways within which people tend to lean. In terms of gay and lesbian relationships, we had talked about this in chapter 11, that there is a much more gender sharing with respect to gay and lesbian relationships. There's much more gender unity and less gender diversity with respect to, by comparison, how straight folks communicate. So there are fewer problems in terms of gay and lesbian relationships with respect to communication that has a gender basis or a gender component. So again, you're looking at same sex and often looking at same gender within same sex relationships. And so that paves the way for a stronger, firmer communication response. And so also gay and lesbian relationships can be a great example of what to do and what not to do with respect to how to best beef up positivity and best communication vibes for straight relationships.